Well, I hate to I hate to interrupt fellowship because I really do. I think that's a huge part of church and what we do. But it is 9 o'clock. It's time to get started. So I want to welcome everybody who braved the cold this morning. I'm not a fan of cold, so I've been grumpy all morning. That's okay. We'll make it. But welcome if you're joining us online. Welcome to you as you are tuning in for our Sunday morning adult Bible class, where we have been walking through a look at the spiritual realm, at angels and demons and spiritual beings and all kind of stuff. We've finally gotten through a lot of the preliminary and hopefully set enough of a groundwork that we can move forward with a little bit more in-depth conversation. This morning we're going to start at the beginning. And so when we start talking about Eden, what do you think of? What pops into your head when I say Eden? Garden. What else? Edendale Junior High. Okay. Adam and Eve, the place where Adam and Eve lived, the garden, rivers flowing through it. The serpent, of course. That's who we're going to be talking about here in a second. What else? The apple. Okay. That there was the fruit. God walking in the garden. Them hiding in the garden. Good stuff. It's the place where Adam and Eve are placed in Genesis. It's the place where God meets with them, communes with them, fellowships with them in Genesis. It is. But there's some questions that arise. For me, one of the questions that I've always wondered is, why doesn't Eve freak out when the serpent starts talking to her? I mean, if a snake starts talking to me, I'm not going to just have a conversation with it. I'm going to freak out a little bit. I don't like snakes to begin with, and so if a snake just sidles up to me and says, "Here, I got something I want you to eat," I'm not really going to be receptive to that. So there's something to that, Miss Pat.
They didn't have any fear of anything that was in the garden.
Right.
They were not fearful of snakes or dragons or, and I think personally that most of the animals could talk before the fall.
Okay.
But that's only
No, that's a common assumption or I guess assumption theory. I guess is good. Bernita, you had your hand up. They didn't know better. That's pretty much the whole point of the story, right? That they eat the fruit and then they do know better. What I want us to look at this morning is how the ancient readers, the original audience of Genesis, would have perceived this. They would have looked at this in a little bit more of a supernatural manner than you and I do, and a little bit less of a literal historical record, and a little bit more broad and supernatural. When we think of a garden, we think of earthly gardens. We think of flowers and trees and plants. And Eden was a garden, but it was more than just a garden. It was the place where God was communing with mankind. It was God's earthly headquarters, if you will, for lack of a better term. And so throughout the rest of Scripture, and especially thinking about other religions as well, what do you call a place where a God communes with mankind? A utopia? Paradise? How about a temple? Usually that's where people go to meet with their gods. What we'll see as we continue to go through that is in the tabernacle, in the temple, on through, reflections of Eden being carried all the way through. That there are things that reflect this idea of where God and man come together, also being carried through every place where God and man come together. People from the biblical period used words like garden and mountain to refer to places where God and man met, where gods and men met. And so I'm not saying that Eden was not a literal garden, because I believe it was, but it was also on a spiritual level a place where God and man communed. Now, if we see that, then we see that this is a temple type area. This is a place where God and man came together. This is if you look at Genesis 2, there's a lot of word. There's also in Ezekiel references in Ezekiel 28 back to Eden, and it uses this well-watered garden motif, and it also calls it a holy mountain. It's not a contradiction. Those are terms that were used for temple areas or places where the gods and men would come together. Now, because of that, now we've talked about already that God is usually in communion with a host, right? A heavenly host. We talked about Elohim and these spiritual beings that are around him. When God says, "Let us make man in our image," he's not talking to himself. He's not talking to the other members of the Trinity, because they also are omniscient and part of the Godhead. There would be no reason to say that. He is talking to his heavenly host. He is talking to these other people. Now, God's the only one that does the creating. You look at Genesis 1:26 when God says, "Let us make man in our image." Then you jump to the next verse in Genesis 1:27, God made man. So God's the only one that does the creating. It's not a team effort. He's not saying, "Let's all jump in and do this together." It's like if I said, "Hey, let's go get pizza." And we all went, but then we got there and I went behind the counter and rolled the dough and tossed it and threw it in the oven and put the toppings on it and cooked it and brought it out and handed it to you. We did not get pizza. I made pizza and shared. You with me? I know it's the best I could come up with, but you get I'm trying to get a metaphor here so we can get this idea. So because of that, then a lot of the original readers would have caught that while serpent was a descriptive term, it may not have been an actual snake. Okay? Now, the scholars are going to disagree on this, and so you're welcome to disagree as well. I'm not telling you this is the right. There are some who will say that the devil inhabited the serpent and spoke through an actual snake. There are others who will say that perhaps it was a spiritual being and it was referred to as a serpent. Either way, it doesn't matter. We know that it's not a snake that's doing the talking. The snake is not the focus. It is whatever entity is behind the snake, is working through the snake or is being called the snake. You with me so far? Because this, look at verse 5 of Genesis chapter 3. The serpent is speaking and says, "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Now, the actual word there is that you will be like Elohim. Elohim, as we've talked about in our terminology study here, is literally translated gods. It is a plural word. And so he's saying, you will be like one of us. You will be like a spiritual being who sees more than what you're seeing now. So you will be like gods, or you will be like spiritual beings. You will be like one of the hosts. You will be like one of God's entourage, or whatever you want to call it, whatever words you want to use there. I don't want us to get bogged down in semantics. But the idea here is that this is one of those Elohim. This is one of those spiritual beings who is speaking and saying, if you eat this, then you're going to be like us. God is exaggerating. Did God really tell you you're going to die? Nah, he didn't say that, did he? He's just worried that you're going to become like one of us. So we this idea here is that these Elohim are created beings, right? Everything's created by God. There's not a duality here. We don't believe that there's an eternal evil and an eternal good, and that's a pagan idea. The Bible teaches that Yahweh is supreme, Yahweh is unique, Yahweh is holy. That's literally what the word means: set apart, different. He is unlike anything else, and Yahweh did all the creating that ever was. And so these created beings that are his entourage, his host, his army, whatever words you want to use there, are part of this. But then he creates these humans and he makes them in his image. Now, what does that mean? Does it just mean they look like him? I don't think so, because obviously, God tells them at other times, you can't even bear to look at me because it's going to blow your mind. You can't handle that. I'm going to give you just a little bit because that's all your little brain can handle. So it's got to be more than just looks. What does it mean if we're created in his image? Anybody? Nobody? We have an eternal soul, like the mind of God. Okay, expand on that a little bit for me. Mm-hmm. Where they knew everything, where they could see everything, where they could understand. They're going to lose that innocence. Cody. More than just how you look. It's a lot of how you are. One of those, so maybe it's more some attributes, characteristics of God. Are we okay with that terminology? Kara. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that like Larry was saying, that we're transcendent in some way, eternal in some way. That there's a spiritual reflection in humanity that is not in maybe some of the other creations.
This knowing right from wrong means he gave us the ability to choose.
Knowing right from wrong means that he gave us the ability to choose. I think there's something significant there. We'll come back to it. You want that more than anything else. That he didn't have to do much convincing, because anytime you tell us you can have everything except this, that's what we want more than if I say don't think about elephants, what are you thinking of right now? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It exactly. And part of that image, part of that attribute is that free will. That like Miss Pat said, we have the ability to choose. Now, why is free will necessary to be made in the image of God? Why is that? Why was that required? So you can make choices? Yeah, so you can make choices. What else? You can have dominion. Absolutely. That was the whole point, Kara. Love requires free will. That's and if we believe that God is love, creating some kind of robot or automaton or whatever you want to call it who just regurgitates words, that's not, there's no love there. There may be some kind of something else, but there's not love as we understand a biblical concept of love. There's no soul. Yes, Ann? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, oh, I'm sorry, Leanne. I oh, good point. Apart from free will, there's no responsibility. I'm sorry. There's no responsibility for actions. There's no accountability. Yeah, there's got to be. Without free will, we're just, I don't know. What are we? I mean, we're not made in the image of God. Rob? That's a good question. That's a good question. What he said was, and we'll put this out for everybody. Do you think there was something special about the actual fruit, or was it more in the action of eating the fruit, or was it a test to see if they were going to abide, or what do you think? Was the fruit actually magic, or was it more in the action and the obedience or disobedience? Cody? Absolutely. That he knew what was going to fail and what was going to not fail. Jason? Maybe it was just in, okay. I mean, it doesn't say. Larry? Yeah. There's something special about the two trees because he's kicking them out before they eat from the tree of life. And so there is something to that. So we've got this image of God, we've got this free will in both the spiritual beings and the humans, right? Because in our image would mean that they also have that agency, that free will. And so only God is perfect. Only God is holy. And so that means if you give free will, if you give self-determination or whatever words you want to use there to beings, whether they be spiritual beings or human beings, they're going to make bad choices. They're going to fail because only God is perfect. And so even these spiritual beings have the free will, the ability to make bad choices, to make to rebel, to go against the direction or the will of God. So we get that the serpent is more than just a reptile. This is not just an animal. This is some kind of supernatural power. An ancient reader would have been alerted whenever you have some kind of talking animal. There's some kind of supernatural thing going on here, because animals don't talk, and so they weren't so primitive that they would think that this was a literal. The word serpent in the scripture is the Hebrew word nakash, which can be translated serpent or snake, but has other meanings as well. The Hebrew root is the basis for a noun, a verb, and an adjective. As a noun, it is usually the word serpent. The verb form means deceiver or diviner. Now we're getting a little bit more clarity, right? So this is not just a snake. This is also some form of deceiver. The adjective form of nakash means shining one, burning one. There's something in there about light. Now, we're going to get to that later when the devil is going to be called a morning star, a bright, there's going to be some reflection in that. So once again now, we're getting this clearer picture, right? That this is more than just an animal. And so as this serpent speaks to Eve and she responds, this nakash is deceiving on purpose. It's not just a casual conversation. The point is the deception. So why? Why do you think, and it doesn't say, it just says the serpent was wily, the serpent was wise, the serpent was and so he's baiting her into this. But why? Why? I mean, we get the two-dimensional comic book villain. Well, he just wanted her to. But why? There's more to this. If you are a created being that is in the presence of God, why? Why would you feel the need to say, "Hey, come"? Did he really tell you couldn't eat that? Did he? Is that what he really said? What do you think?
This is all leading to a rescuer, a redeemer.
Right.
If they didn't fall, then the redeemer would not be necessary.
Okay, absolutely. This is all pointing towards a redeemer, pointing towards a savior. That's necessary. Oh, Gene.
She was reading my mind. There's no necessity for redemption without rebellion, without fall. But the end game is thankfulness. Is coming to fully understand a full knowledge of the importance of what God has actually done for us, saving us.
That say that again. No, you did so good. That's why I'm like,
It's all about gratitude, exaltation of God, thankfulness, getting the joy of salvation in our heart, so that we are able to see God in different ways than we saw Him.
very good. It is about redemption, but it's also about gratitude, thankfulness, exaltation of God, that we are going to see God in a different way than had this not happened. Katie? Absolutely. Cody. Okay. That it's always part of the plan. That this has always been part of the plan. This has always been part of God's overarching plan for mankind. There's a. Oh, I'm sorry, Ernie. The plan was always that Adam and Eve was going to sin. So was that the plan, or was it just the understanding? Like did God put them in a place and make them sin? Did God set them up to fail? Is that what we're saying? Or Tim? Right. So the plan was to give them free will. And God has foreknowledge, right? Because he's not part of time and space. He's not going, well, let's see what will happen. He knows what's going to happen. But part of giving free will is offering them the opportunity to make that choice. Mm. Absolutely. If grace would not be as big a deal, I'm just restating this for everybody else. Grace would not be as big a deal if we were put into a place where we had no choice but to sin, because then it was already predetermined anyway. Gary, you've been patient. Okay. Was the creation of man part of the plan to rid heaven of this contagion, of this evil, of this sin, of this rebellion, whatever words you want to use there? And were they just were we just the bait, for lack of a better word, Cody? Yeah, he didn't just create man just for the fun of it. We're here to expand that Eden. I mean, that's what he tells them at the beginning, to have dominion over the earth. He's not saying, go make oil refineries. He's saying go and expand this kingdom of God throughout the entire world. You are the agents. You are the imagers who are there are some translators who say that should be translated, let us make man in our image, to let us make man as our image, that it can go either way. And so if you say it like that, as our imagers, then you see mankind more as a earthly ambassador, to use Paul's word, maybe? I don't know. There was a hand. Miss Pat.
Apparently, I mean, we don't know God totally yet. Maybe we'll not. But apparently, he wanted somebody to choose to serve him,
Mm.
to choose to love him. The angels had no choice. He wanted someone to choose him.
Okay. Okay. That he wanted someone to choose. Tony, did you have your hand up? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. 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 That he knew, and that foreknowledge does not always mean predestination. Does that make sense? Just because God knew something was going to happen doesn't mean that. Now, let me give you a scriptural example of that I can hang my hat on. 1 Samuel chapter 23. Okay? 1 Samuel 23, we're going to see David. He's on the run. He's running from Saul, and he gets asked to go and to help these people in this town who the Philistines are attacking. Look at 1 Samuel 23. I'm going to read verse 1 and 2. Now they told David, look, the Philistines are fighting in Keilah, and they are raiding the threshing floors. So David inquired of Yahweh, saying, shall I go and attack these Philistines? And Yahweh said to David, go, attack the Philistines, and save Keilah. So God says, yeah, go ahead, go do that. And so David goes. And he gets there, and after the fighting and whatnot, then verse 3 through 5. But David's men said to him, look, we're afraid here in Judah. How much more if we go to Keilah for the battle lines of the Philistines? So David again inquired of Yahweh, and Yahweh answered him and said, get up, go down to Keilah, for I'm giving the Philistines into your hand. So David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines. They drove off their livestock and dealt them a heavy blow. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. So David and his men, right, God told David what would happen if he and his men attacked the Philistines. Go down, you will defeat the Philistines. And it gave David's men the confidence to overcome their fear. Now, they still had the free will to decide not to go. Right? They still had the free. God didn't say you have to. God didn't pick them up like little army men you used to play with when you were a kid. Maybe that was just me. You know, the little ones that had their feet glued to that piece of plastic, and you just move them around. It wasn't like that, because those little army men don't have any choice of where I put them. David and his men had the choice to go down there, and now let's look at the next verses, because that's when we're going to see something here. Now, when Abiathar the son of Ahimelech fled to David at Keilah, he went down with an ephod in his hand. When it was told to Saul that David had gone to Keilah, Saul said, God has given him into my hand because he has shut himself in by going into a city with 2 barred gates. Saul then summoned all the army for the battle to go down to Keilah to lay siege against David and his men. When David learned that Saul was plotting evil against him, he said to Abiathar the priest, bring the ephod here. And David said, O Yahweh, God of Israel, your servant has clearly heard that Saul is seeking to come to Keilah to destroy the city because of me. Will the rulers of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Yahweh, God of Israel, please tell your servant. And Yahweh said, he will come down. Then David said, will the rulers of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul? And Yahweh said, they will deliver you. Okay, so God's telling him this is what's going to happen, right? So David and his men got up, about 600 men, and went out from Keilah and wandered wherever they could go. When it was told to Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, he stopped his pursuit. Now, what do we see here? David asked God two questions. Will Saul come to Keilah, and will the rulers deliver me to them? Neither one of those things actually happened. But God said, yes, Saul's going to come down. He didn't come down. God said, yes, they will deliver you. They didn't deliver him. So my point here is, David still had the free will, right? If he would have stayed in Keilah, then what God said would have happened. Because that's foreknowledge. Foreknowledge does not mean predestination. Just because God saw that it would happen, there was still the agency of David to make choices that could change that. Are you with me so far? That's Tim. Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better, and I'm not even going to try. But yeah, foreknowledge and predestination, while connected, are not the same thing. That God knew that some would obey and some would disobey, and just because he knew that, he predestined that those who did obey would hang on. I'm going to go Jason and then back to Katie. Oh, ephod was it was this little thing that they used to determine how God would answer them. It was to determine the will of God. It basically was like yeah, but different. It was a belt, and there was, if it did this stone, it was this, and so it was a kind of a yes or no answer, but they would discern from that whatever. But it was how they discerned the will of God. Katie? Right. So it's like I don't know if this is just me, but when I was a kid and you went to the Scholastic Book Fair, you'd get those little book that was Choose Your Own Adventure. You remember those? And you read a little bit, and then it'd say turn to page 16 if you want to do this, turn to page 25 if you want to do this. It's like we are the ones who are reading the book, right? And we're making the choice. God's the author. He wrote both outcomes. He knows how it's going to end, and so he's not bound by whatever choice is made. He wrote the book. Does that make sense? I know it's still a bad analogy, but Jason. Pieces in a game, and he's playing the game. Yes. So all this is coming back to our focus. Did God create evil? Did God cause evil to happen? Just because he knew that the serpent would rebel, just because he knew that the serpent would choose to tempt Eve and she would fail, and just because he knew that Adam would then follow suit, doesn't mean that he caused it to happen. Does that make sense? You with me on that? Now, let's go back to this serpent, because that's our focus this morning. That the serpent is also seen as superior in knowledge and understanding to the humans, right? Do you buy that? Because he knows things they don't know, right? Now, if we go back, Adam is portrayed as wiser than the animals he is appointed to rule over, right? So obviously, once again, this is not just a snake. You with me on this? I'm just giving you more ammunition. Right. The serpent assumes this role of kind of humanity's teacher or humanity's superior in some way. And a lot of commentators point out that the term crafty and the term naked look very much like one another in the way they're written in Hebrew. And so this is kind of a wordplay thing. There's a lot of that in the Old Testament. The Jews like their wordplay. And so we don't get it because they don't look the same in English. But it's kind of saying that while the serpent is crafty, it's not really saying that he was clever or something like that. It's saying that he was smarter, wiser, superior in some way. And naked doesn't just mean not wearing clothes. It means innocent and not having that level of knowledge. You with me? Does that make sense? So we've established this pretty good. I'm going to move on because we're almost out of time, and so we've got to find a stopping place for today. So let me leave you with this, and this is where we'll pick up next time. The idea of the serpent, the snake, is it would have been a common visual in the readers that they would have understood to mean more than just a snake. The idea of a serpent. Now, remember, the people who are reading this wasn't written as it was happening. You know, there wasn't, Adam wasn't sitting over here going, hang on just a minute, let me get this down. It was written much later, we believe, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, but it wasn't a minute by minute record. The people reading this were Jews who had been released from slavery in Egypt. You with me so far? In Egypt, the throne guardians are serpents. They are serpentine creatures. They have wings and little, you don't care. I'm just giving you the picture. You can look that up on your own if you want to. But the throne guardians are these serpentine creatures. So that's going to create a bell in their head, right? And next week we'll start looking at the idea that maybe, we've said angel is a job description. It's not a classification of being. There are a lot of classifications of beings. These spiritual beings are called by their job descriptions. The only class of spiritual being that we know of, and obviously we may not know everything, but that is serpentine, is the seraphim, who are throne guardians, who are, the word seraph has a serpentine connection. So maybe, and again, very much conjecture. The Bible does not say this in any shape, form, or fashion, so don't hear me saying that this is fact. But it would make sense that if the throne guardians, the ones who are like God's secret service, are there with God, are guarding the place, or guarding Eden, or guarding maybe the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that maybe this serpent is some form of seraphim. I don't know. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying it's not a big leap to jump there. Now, what I want to leave you with, that I want you to take home and toss around in your head all week, is that you notice I have not said, I keep referring to him as the serpent. Genesis does not call the serpent Satan. So where do we get the idea that the serpent is Satan? From the New Testament, absolutely. Genesis does not call the serpent Satan. In fact, throughout the Old Testament, the word Satan is never used as a proper name. It is always accompanied by the article. It's always the Satan. The Satan. Only in the New Testament does it get changed and become the name of a spiritual entity. We'll talk about what that means next time. That's my teaser, right? It's like at the end of a TV show. Stay tuned next week. So that's what we're doing next week. We'll start with some of that. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for conversation. You have about 13 minutes, and we'll be back in here for worship. Thank you.